Hey everyone, good afternoon, good evening. It is Saturday night, so welcome. Hope you all are doing well. Just give it a few minutes for everyone to jump in. Stephen Boland, I'm here to thank you so much for joining, Stephen. Hope you're having a great day. I saw your pictures of your new dogs. Congrats on that. It's so cool. Very exciting. Hey, Dissolution Pony Tricks, great to see you. Thank you so much for joining us today. And while I'm waiting for just a minute for people to join, let's see if I can adjust my settings because I'm a little bit off. So how are you all doing? Adjusted a different way. You all having a good Saturday? So I am. Hey, thank you so much for joining us today. Unconditional Love Consciousness Center. I love it. Thank you so much. So before we jump into today's topic, I just wanted to mention a few quick things here. And by the way, I'm hopeful that my camera won't do what it did last time. Last time it was good for about an hour and 15 minutes, and it suddenly went out. I've closed down almost everything on my computer that has anything to do with visual stuff, so hopefully not much is using up the bandwidth of the graphics card and so forth. But anyways, hopefully that's resolved for this one. And I just wanted to go over a few quick things for my... Oh, hey, Jamel. What's up, man? Great to see you. Everyone, please do check out Jamel. He's done great work. Honored to interview him a while ago. And just great, awesome interview. He's doing awesome stuff. So thank you so much. And Susanna's in the house. Great to see you. Hi, everyone. Good to see you, Tim. Thank you so much, Susanna, for joining us, representing Scotland tonight. Thank you so much. And it's almost bedtime there, right? 9 o'clock at night. So thank you so much for joining us. And I did want to just go over a few quick things before I jump in. Just want to mention, apologize again for being sort of incognito. Life's been crazy, as it is for so many of us, and it is what it is. But life's been crazy, and there's been some transitions, and there's some more transitions coming up shortly, probably even some major transitions this week. Just trying to roll with the punches and figure out the best way forward so that I can best meet my kids' needs and just be there for them as much as possible, but at the same time still grow the channel and build on the great stuff that's been happening here for a while. So, and in terms of just going forward, wanted to mention that we're going to be doing a lot more of these monologues, the sort of monologues I did before. I'm going to be doing those where I pre-record them. I'm working on one right now that I'm very excited about. It's been in the works for a while, probably arguably too long, but it's going to be pretty cool in terms of just what's on my heart and the way it's presented. And then it's going to be a little bit of a longer one as a kickoff. And then I'm going to be doing a whole bunch of just shorter monologues that I think will address some topics. It'll be really a help to a lot of people. So keep your eye out for those coming pretty soon. The first big one is going to be called Christianity Broke My Heart. And that is very much near and dear to my heart. It's been on my mind almost from day one. And I heard that expression early on in my deconstruction process, and it meant a lot to me. And I resonated with it a lot, and it felt like it was exactly what was going on. But in terms of my schedule, I do have the kids a lot right now, and it's great to be with them and blessing them, and they're such a blessing and help to me. But they're a lot. It's 4 kids age 9 and under. My oldest one is almost 10, but currently 4 kids 9 and under. It's a lot. As a single dad, it's a big adjustment, but they're awesome. I love having them in every which way. And again, some changes coming very soon. Probably even this week, they're going to make it even more so where I'm focused on them, but it's going to be harder and harder. So what I'm going to be doing, just FYI kind of stuff, is I'm going to be doing a lot more of my work at night, including some live streams. I'm going to be doing more live streams later at night, which I know for those of you in the UK and Europe would be harder for you to get plugged in. And I'm sorry about that, but please do check out the recordings, the next day. But I'm going to be doing some stuff later at night. And then I'm also going to be doing some stuff, even just number one, while I'm driving around, and I'll be looking at the road, not the camera, but having the camera on and just chatting about what's on my heart. And then I'll publish that later in the day, and a bunch of other stuff. So it's going to be a little different. It's it's like anything in life, you just got to roll with the punches and figure out what works best for you. But again, thank you for your patience with me as I sort of realign with the schedule changes that have occurred and that are about to sort of go on steroids. But it's all very, very good. And anyone that is able to is sort of aware of that process behind the scenes with me, anyone that's able to support me, all the ways to do so are beneath this video. I definitely value and appreciate that so much. So here we got Psychology coming from Germany. Thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate that. And Alex, great to see you from Germany. If you could recommend just one book that helps deconstruct the Christian belief, what would it be? Do you have affiliate links? Great question, Psychology. I don't have affiliate links at the moment. I've been thinking about doing it. I certainly will probably have that. There's also a few other things I want to be doing, such as shirts and hats and mugs you can buy for the Harmonic Atheist channel. But in terms of one particular book, I don't know that there is one I would recommend. I'm actually working on sort of writing that myself, if you will. But I would say it's a mixture. To me, it's not less about one book because, it's deconstruction is in many ways about the conglomeration of reasons. There's a whole litany of reasons that people need to rethink their Christian beliefs, and there really is no one book that gives you all information. Now, I would say for anyone that is just starting, the one book I would recommend, or maybe even call it the video, and I'll pop it up here, is Bill Zersher's video I've mentioned before, Seeing Through Christianity. And I'll put that link here in 1 second. But Bill's, and I was really just so honored to interview him as well. But let's see here. Here is his video. It's called, again, Seeing Through Christianity. Hopefully that works right there. Let me just double check that. Yeah, that looks like it works. Okay. But that one is a great starting point. That is an awesome starting point for someone where they're just like, I don't know where to even start. I think there's some deconstruction issues. I've heard some people raise some good questions, but where do I start? Now, that particular video is more on the lines of the mythology and the sort of the ways that Christianity and Judaism have evolved over the years. For someone that's looking more on the side of just the theological questions, even the ways that we talk about, Yahweh being a psychopathic God. There's a book that I've got it actually. I've got it way over there. I won't step away from the camera, but it's that one where it's like that God is that whole litany of things where he's a psychopathic narcissist, genocidal maniac, that thing. I think it's written by Dan Barker or something like that. But anyway, it's a great book. So look that up. Let me see if I can find it while we're chatting here. But that's a good one if you're talking about that. But really the issue, and I'll get right into our topic here in a minute. But the issue to me is that it's everything. You can't say that it's all just the issue of mythology, and it's not just the issue of the psychopathic nature of Yahweh. It's everything. It's everything together. It just doesn't make sense. And so I think it really would benefit us to look at all aspects of it. To me, it was primarily heavy on the mythology side of it, but it wasn't the whole thing. A lot of it too is honestly just thinking through the questions, like the rationality of it. Does it make sense to say, for example, God needs blood just to forgive? That kind of stuff. You get to a point. Here we go. You get to a point where you just can't stomach it anymore. Okay, so it's Dan Barker. It's called God. God, the most unpleasant character in all fiction. So if you're looking at that side of it, for the psychopathic nature of God, that's a good one. And again, the Bill Zersher video that I put up the link for, he did that video based on his book, so you can look up his book as well. So anyway, let me jump into our topic here for the day. I don't even know what I would call myself. That's totally cool, Alex. I think it's a great idea to be able to just say, I don't know where I land yet, and that's okay. That's part of the Christian system, is you have to be one of us, or or else you're with us or you're against us. It's like, no, I'm not sure where I am. I'm not comfortable landing where I would landed before, but I'm going to take my time, and that's part of the freedom of it is saying, not just I have freedom to leave, but also to say I have freedom to say, I just don't know. I don't know the answers yet. And I don't need a category, So great to see you, John. Thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate it. And Susanna says, Dan Barker and Richard Dawkins for that quote. I'll be here when I can. You're doing amazingly for your kids in this community you created. Thank you so much, Susanna. Appreciate your support so much. Thanks for your answer. Eagerly waiting for your book. Would like to have it as a present for a relative, and it would be awesome if it contains a variety of reasons to deconstruct. Yeah, I'm going to try my best to do both some videos as well as a book eventually, as well as some stuff for kids that will help people. I think part of the problem that I've seen, and I've talked about this before, is that there's an intimidation factor of, if you get into it, it feels like it's a rabbit hole that goes really, really deep. It's like, how deep does this go? And do I need to know a little bit about Josephus or a lot? How much? Do I need to be able to read a little Hebrew? Do I need to know much about the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Qumran community? Do I need to know about the Essenes? What about the Book of Enoch? How much do I need to know? And, the Greco-Roman mystery cults, yada, yada, the whole Second Temple Judaism, numerology, astrotheology. And I think to a layperson who's just like brand new to this, even if they've been a Christian for 40 years, if they're new to the deconstruction, deconversion topics, it's just like, I just don't know where to even start. And so I know a lot of people don't go down that path. They end up just saying, well, I don't know what that all means, but I know what it means to say God doesn't seem like a very good father. So they lean towards that philosophical stuff, the theodicy kind of stuff. But when you look at, the whole mixture together, there's a lot there. And I feel like it's important for us as a deconversion community to try to put things in a way that people that are going to be new to, because there are people that are going to come and join our community in a year or 2 years or 5 years that have never heard the stuff we're talking about. And for them, they need a starting point that's not, the 12-foot deep end. They're starting at the shallow end. They need a 3-foot pool. They need a doggy paddle for a while. And it's just, we can't assume that they're going to understand everything we're saying. So, excuse me. John says, unmet needs are commonplace in Christianity, and faith is due to a lack of understanding and nothing more. Yeah. Very well said, John. Very well said. So what I wanted to do, if I could, I'll use that as a launching pad, as a segue to jump in. I wanted to mention a few thoughts and sort of paint a picture. But this is basically, as a lot of what I'm going to be doing and transitioning to here with the monologues, is an attempt to start with a topic that is brought to the community in a live stream, give some ideas, put them on the plate, see what people say, see what sticks to the wall, and sort of ask your opinion on some of the topics that are on my mind. And then for a lot of these, if I can streamline it and get it to where I want it to be, 2, 3, 4 weeks later, you will see a monologue on that exact same topic. So we will kind of have discussed it a little bit, and I'll incorporate some of the ideas and feedback I get, and then weave that in. It might be more stretched out than that, like a month or two later, but eventually I want it to be, for a lot of them, where it's a 1-for-1, where you're like, oh yeah, he's got a monologue coming out, but we talked about that 4 or 6 weeks ago. So hopefully that makes sense. But I do want to think about just exploring this, and I'm not, again, ever trying to be clever. I'm not trying to say I understand psychology more than anybody else. I'm just a beggar trying to find the bread, but I'm trying to think through and understand what's happened to us when we were in Christianity, and what happens to us when we escape, and also what happens when we look at the people that are still stuck in it. And I think for me, one of the most interesting questions is the question of, when we look at people who are still stuck in it, and we bring up the issues of why it's not true, why it's mythology, why it doesn't make sense, it seems like there's two big issues going on. One of them is the lack of information. And for me, I think that was one of my primary aspects of my journey. I just didn't know. I didn't know enough about the Book of Enoch or whatever. I didn't know the information. And once I learned it, it changed everything. But I've come to see and really think that a lot of people are not staying in Christianity because they don't have enough information. They might not still. That might truly be an issue. But I think a lot of it might be related more towards unmet needs. And we've talked before about another maybe parallel aspect of this. I'm going to jump into the unmet needs in a second. But the issue of the terror of what if Christianity isn't real? What does that imply? How scary is that? What if I don't have a transcendent meaning and purpose? What if there's not a God to whom we have to give an account? What if ultimate justice is not on the table? What if I won't see my loved ones again? The terror of the implications of that. And what if, if you're right, Mr. Atheist, then I've truly wasted my life. That's one side of it that I think is very real. People just can't face that possibility that they might have truly given their lives to a delusion. But another side that I'm beginning to explore and think through is the idea of Christianity is meeting on a surface level an unmet need. It's like an addiction. And the reason it came to mind is this, and I'm going to give a little preface here, and I'm sorry, this is sort of drawing it up, but I want to give the launching pad. When you look at relationships, like love relationships in life, it seems to me more and more as I get older, and I hope this isn't the skepticism in me growing, we all get jaded in life, but I think this is not that. I think what I'm about to say is not that. I think this is the reality of it. I think a lot of us fall in love and love people and get into relationships, romantic and otherwise, where we are not really in them. We're not really ourselves, and perhaps the other person isn't really themselves, but we're like two people doing a dance, and neither person really actually knows what they're doing or perhaps even truly cares to be there, but they think they need to be there, and they almost think they want to be there. And what's happening, I think, behind the scenes is there's these unmet needs, and we're sort of crying out, as it were, for people to meet our unmet needs. So we get into love relationships, and that's why you have these situations where there's such loveless marriages out there, because the people thought they could enter into a marriage to get their needs met. And I'm not talking about sexual needs. I'm talking about their true relationship, fundamental personhood needs. And then they've realized that they're not going to be met. And they didn't really love the person that they married. They loved the idea psychologically that this person is going to fulfill me. They're the missing piece of my puzzle. I feel so lost, and now they're my home. I feel so unloved. They're going to love me. I feel so unwanted. They're going to want me. I feel so devalued, and they're going to value me. I don't feel like I've got a place, and I'll have a place. I want an identity, and I want it to be clear. I want it to be strong, and I want it to be firm. And people make up these fantasies in their mind. We all do it. And we think that person's going to meet our needs on those deep, profound psychological levels, and then they don't. And you realize when we fall in love, we're not falling in love with a person. We're falling in love with a facade and a mask and an image that we have put up of them. We think they're the projection of who we want them to be to meet our needs, but that's not really them. And they're doing the same thing to you. And so we're falling in love with masks. We're falling in love with facades. We're falling in love with phantoms that never existed and probably never will. And when you think about that, it's, number one, obviously very depressing to think that finding someone that truly loves you, that is not there for what they can get, but actually loves you, is a very rare thing. It's a very rare thing to experience. Again, it's depressing, I know, but we have to be honest. I'd rather be honest and examine life and examine relationships than pretend. But at the same time, that topic, which that's its own topic in itself, we could talk about that for a while. If this were a romance channel, obviously, if we were talking about, how to date or whatever, how to court, but we're talking about, deconversion. But I think that because that's been on my mind a lot over the last few years, I think that in many ways there's some parallels. And I think in many ways it helps us to understand that part of it, to say, yes, we do fall in love with what's not reality. We fall in love with what we think is reality. And it gives us the warm fuzzies, but it's just, we're dependent on this, something like a dopamine rush, and you end up getting very blindsided by reality later. And so many of us have felt it and are feeling it even this very moment. But that being, again, its own topic and as an aside, when you switch over and say, what are the parallels of that to Christianity? I think in many ways, the Yahweh figure and the idea of the church and the church community, as well as our salvation, as well as our future in heaven, has a lot of parallels, where you're coming to Jesus with these unmet needs. And it's interesting how some of them are legitimate human needs, and some of them are not really as legitimate, but they're created by the Christian culture, by the Christian narrative. Where we end up creating in children needs that they didn't have, but now they do, and then now they feel them, specifically because of things such as original sin and the idea that you are worthless apart from God. So I want to go over some notes I've put together. That was more just off the top of my head. Before I do, I want to just read a few comments, because I know last time too I had an issue where I was reading my notes so tightly that I wasn't looking at the trolls that were in the group, and I apologize for that. But let's see here. I'm just going to read these. So it looks like Stephen was talking a little bit about his dogs. I'm going to skip about that, but that's so awesome again, Stephen. Thank you so much for sharing that with the community, and I love that you love animals and show your heart for them. Let's see here. It's a beautiful thing to rescue a dog and give it so much love. Gerald, happy holidays if folks are celebrating Kwanzaa, Yule, or Hanukkah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, sleep is gone. Lots of coffee. Thank you, John. I appreciate your support. Yeah, codependency is a bitch. Absolutely. Bingo. Yeah, and it's. I think it's in a lot of our hearts. I think a lot of us have been sort of talking about these topics. So I'm obviously not bringing anything new, just trying to kind of keep pulling the layers back of the onion. Next episode after God is an illusion is love is an illusion. Yeah, exactly. Ouch. Very close to my situation. No safe spaces for each other. Yeah, exactly. Now that I've departed the chaos, I find I don't need to be around people anymore. I dig my aloneness when my wife isn't around. Yeah, that's an interesting side part of it. It's funny how so many of us, we end up finding ourselves, I think especially the introverts in the room, like, I'm one of them. We find that the solitude can really be a big help to us and recharge our batteries. The only person that can meet your needs is yourself. Yeah, agreed, 100%. Absolutely. And starting with as well the idea of how do you see yourself? What is your self-talk, including self-love? Susanna says, it's best to be fully honest about getting to know your own identity when our identity was fully in Christ. Yeah, and shadow work helps, absolutely. So going back to some notes here, I just want to go through again, the idea of the long-met addiction and the unmet needs that Christianity guides us into thinking that we have, as well as gives us a facade that it's met them. So I'm going to put it this way. It starts in childhood. A child is born into this environment where they're shaped by their Christian beliefs, and they often have these very loving caregivers who frame religion as truth. They frame the Bible as the ultimate authority. And beneath this exterior, there's this undercurrent. It's kind of insidious. And there are these early seeds of dependency and guilt that are sown and woven into it. The child, learns love and acceptance, of course, from the parents as well as from the God character. But it's always contingent upon their behavior and their beliefs. And there's sort of this invisible thread that is pulling them back every time they stray too far into it. And for a lot of us, some of the major threads that kept pulling us back and saying, no, don't go that, it's a wrong path, was the path of self-dependence and self-love. I remember so many messages of do not love yourself. The message, even the straight up Bible verses, put yourself to death. And you get a sense that you shouldn't trust yourself, but also that you shouldn't really like yourself. And you're very much not safe in your own skin. And, even in the most well-meaning homes, the sense of insecurity can linger. It's unseen, but it's very tangible, very real, and it's long-term. It's doing damage. And so a child's basic needs for safety and love and belonging get tied up in the framework of Christianity. And that dependency is going to be cloaked in the idea of like spiritual nurture and connecting with God, having a relationship with God. But it's embedding the ideas that external validation is required for internal peace and internal stability and thriving. Peace at that level becomes a bit of a mirage. It's always outside of you. It's always a step away from you, a step ahead of you. It's out of reach. And over time, we internalize that message. Your intrinsic worth is insufficient. And again, I've said it before many times. I'm going to keep saying it probably many times over the years. I don't want to make this channel the message that you are worthy. I want to make this channel the message that worthiness is not a thing. So don't mix those up. But I'm framing it in the sense of how Christianity does for the moment. Your worthiness and what you feel is worthiness, even though I think we should probably ignore the idea of how you feel about worthiness. Your intrinsic feeling of that becomes that you're insufficient. and your reliance on God becomes your only real pathway to heal these inadequacies that it's created. You don't yet comprehend that they're there, but you feel so worthless or lost or empty, and you're like, God, fill me up. Well, why do I need to be filled up? Because you're so empty yourself. And when you're taught with original sin that you're inherently flawed, but of course you can be redeemed, you have this profound sense of guilt, but also this profound sense that there's a redeemer, a rescuer, a savior, there's a path forward. And there's this promise of unconditional love. But of course, with this unconditional love, it's a paradox, because it's sort of comforting and condemning. It's a light that blinds as it shines, because it's instilling this profound sense of guilt. And so God's saying, I love you so much, but jump through these hoops, first of faith and then of works. And that duality creates a very big emotional void. It's telling ourselves you are loved, but at the same time you need to yearn for love, yet at the same time you need to feel inherently unworthy of love. So it's like you are loved, but you don't feel loved, so strive for love, but know that you're not worthy of love. And love ends up being, of course, very, very, very conditional to us in those cases. It's predicated on your profession of faith and your adherence to this external set of rules. And so a child will mask that confusion with compliance, of course, because everyone's going to applaud in the room. Yay, little Johnny, little Susie got saved. You get your applause from your parents, your teachers, your spiritual leaders, and your doubts get buried. But again, there's unmet needs. Some of them are there in every human, I think. Some of them it's being created artificially by Christianity, but the messages take root. The child learns your value and your purpose do not come from who you are. They come from how well you align with the set of doctrines and with how, with your perception and alignment with God's will. And so natural curiosity and individuality are basically irrelevant in those contexts. They get slowly eroded, they get carved away, like if you're carving wood. My kids recently have gotten into soap carving. Have you all done that? Where they literally just, you get a bar of white soap and carve it into something really cool. But they're carving away at your personality, and it's almost like the only thing that eventually is left is a silhouette of who you really are or could have been. And again, I'm just going through some notes here real quick. I'll jump back into the comments in a minute. But all these things, even good things, like acts of kindness or obedience or curiosity, they get reframed. It's righteous or it's sinful. It's in the flesh or it's not. It's your pride speaking. And you have these moral dichotomies all over the place and these rigid frameworks that, they're both diminishing the complexity of human emotion, but they're also making it way more complex than it ever needed to be, because you're constantly questioning yourself. Why am I doing this? Am I doing this for God? Am I doing this to be prideful? And every action goes into this moral system, and the nuance is sacrificed on the altar of certainty. If you do it God's way, you'll be fine. And it's almost like, our hearts as children are yearning for something deeper, but they're also yearning for just the simplicity of life. And, all the emotions that you have as a child, anger, joy, sadness, they're reframed as moral barometers of who you are and of how much God should be angry at you. And they just keep entrenching these beliefs that your feelings have to be controlled and you have to align with these divine expectations, and your heart becomes a battleground. And in many ways, I think what's going on is you don't realize that the battleground that's going on is you are thinking you're fighting to align with God and to be obedient, when in reality, what you're doing on the inside is you're fighting, as it were, if you could put a voice to and words to it, you're saying, I just want my basic psychological, emotional needs to be met. And of course, children can't frame it that way, but that's what's happening. And each emotion becomes a soldier in the war for worthiness. And positive reinforcement. Jesus loves you when you're good, and then the fear-based tactics, like hell's gonna await you if you're unfaithful. It creates this emotional dependency on pleasing God and others, your church, your parents, and approval becomes your currency of survival. And it becomes a very comforting thing if you're doing it right. And I jumped through a lot of those hoops really, really well as a kid. But in the long run, whether you look good on the surface for a while or you don't, it's a very fleeting comfort, a very fleeting balm, for these wounds that are eventually going to refuse to close, and you have to eventually actually close them the right way. A little bit of lotion and Band-Aid over cancer isn't going to fix it. This has to be actually addressed directly. And I think for a lot of us, what feels like devotion to God is often actually a desperate internal attempt to avoid punishment and to cling to our fragile sense of security. And we have this veneer of like, I'm close to God, I've got a relationship with him. But beneath it all is this fear, maybe I'm unredeemable. And eventually, if you really let that be fully exposed, you realize you have become like, you have let this theology and your church system and your Christian culture and your own thoughts are attacking you. You've become the architect of your own prison, and you're building your walls higher and higher with every doubt that you have. But your unmet needs are going through the roof, and the shame grows, and the child matures, and they internalize the narrative, and they get, they know that they're broken and they're weak and they're incapable of true goodness without divine intervention, and that just festers and it shapes their self-concept. And you're fundamentally defective, and you need saving all the time. And every moment that you're doubting God or not doing his way becomes a further crack in the mirror of how you can see yourself. And you have this image of yourself that gets more and more distorted until you really can't even recognize yourself. Normal human struggles, normal human emotions, they're just evidence in that system of your sinful nature. And instead of Christianity fostering self-compassion, this whole worldview and framework turns you into a constant proof of failure. And it just perpetuates this cycle of shame. And the shame is like a shadow that, that's going to carry you everywhere. It's funny. I was watching Peter Pan the other day, and I wasn't really watching it. My kids were, but there's that scene at the beginning, the original cartoon where Peter Pan had lost his shadow and he has to come get it back from Wendy's from the drawer in the cupboard, and it's like that. But your shadow, really in real life, of course, goes with you everywhere, and the shadow of shame really does follow you intensely in Christianity. And it just keeps whispering to you in your thought life, the true self-talk. You are never enough without God. You're never sufficient but God. And the voice kind of grows louder over time. And it, especially when you sin and stumble, whatever word we would have used for it, you just keep on hearing this message of, you really are, like, you're seeing the evidence of how bad you are, but God's grace is bigger. And the unmet needs grow. The need to say, I am never really grounded and I'm never really safe. I'm not safe in my own thoughts because I'm basically attacking myself. If my biggest need is sanctification, now that I'm saved, if my biggest need is to be a pure vessel for God, then every time I sin, I'm basically attacking the version of myself that I want to be. I want to be, and I will be in glory, pure and holy and useful. And now, because I'm not doing that enough, consistently enough, I'm basically attacking the best version of myself that I want to be. And so you have this war within yourself. You feel like your need is sanctification. I mean, your actual need is to just, be okay with yourself, to be truly okay, to talk kindly to your own identity. But again, this weaves into our identity. It dictates our choices. It crushes our self-trust. And it just seems like the universe itself. I know we wouldn't anthropomorphize the universe like that. We would say it's God, but it feels like almost like the universe itself is conspiring to remind you constantly, you are unworthy. And, that's a powerful motivator and drives us to seek approval from God. And every time we feel like we're there's something that kind of puts us back in that cycle. And it feels like that, it's like the horizon that's just stretching further and further away. If you're looking at the sunset and you're chasing it, you can't, your boat won't move fast enough across the water to chase that sunset. Eventually it's going to get dark. But as we grow and these unmet needs become sort of masked by religious rituals, and the church community becomes your surrogate family, worship services, youth groups, church events, they give you that connection and belonging. It all hinges on conformity. And it creates this conditional sense. Again, conditional is such a big part of this. It creates a conditional sense of community. And, smiles hide their judgment. They're judging you and they think you're judging them. And, acceptance, we all know, comes with such incredible strings attached that, tighten every time you do a step wrong. And the pressure to perform spiritually erodes your unconditional belonging, even if your theology is tight. And I would argue mine was very tight. My theology was very, very tight, and I still felt the sting of some of this stuff. But everything, even authentic relationships sort of become transactional interactions that are cloaked in the spiritual language. And it's like your heart is just aching throughout this whole thing. I have unmet needs to just get into basic humanity. And it's one of the things that I've said it in different ways over the years, but it's one of the most heartbreaking things is that Christianity deprives you of the ability to actually just live your life. You can't just live your life, And that's a lot of this is when you say living your life, I mean by this figuring out who you are and diving into your humanity. I just want to look at the comments for one section. I'm sort of deviating from my intention to look at the comments more, but I want to get through these notes real fast. And it looks like we don't have any trolls at the moment, so I think we're good. But anyway, the love that you seek as a Christian, it feels both overwhelming in the sense of beautiful, like, wow, the God of the universe loves me, but it's also very distant. And it's a paradox that perpetuates the craving for more religious experiences because you want to bridge that gap. And so your prayer, your time at the Lord's table, at communion, baptism, all this stuff, time in the Word, time at church, doing missions, it offers this emotional catharsis, and it temporarily soothes your guilt and your shame and the distance that you feel, and the faith is it's still instilling in you inherently. But these acts become a performance, and it's like a stage where salvation gets rehearsed constantly, but it's never fully realized. And of course, it never could be fully realized because it's mythology. The fullest of your salvation would happen when you die if that worldview were correct. And because it's incorrect, it's mythology, that salvation cannot ever be attained. But it's like you rehearse it all the time. God is saving you constantly in light of the fact that he's going to eventually save you permanently. And those moments where you feel like you're sort of breaking out of time and into eternity in worship or whatever, they feel transformative. They're these emotional resets, but they're not pathways to lasting healing. They're just temporary dopamine hits. And the highs can fade very quickly, and they leave behind for us a very gnawing sense that something fundamental has remained unresolved, and it hurts to ignore it. But we kind of have to, because we have to tell ourselves that everything we need for life and godliness is met in the person of Jesus Christ. And because that's obviously complete and utter garbage, but we tell ourselves it's not. We tell ourselves it's the truth when we're Christians. These fundamental human unmet needs, they just sit there, and we think there's something wrong with me because my unmet needs have been clearly defined by Christianity in the Bible, both the needs as well as the resolution in Christ and in the gospel. So what's my problem? Why am I still struggling? And you dare not voice it. You dare not voice what's really going on inside of your heart, that your unmet needs are screaming, I need to be grounded. I need to thrive. I need to be healthy. I need to figure out what's going wrong here. And so you have these unspoken questions, and they're like, footsteps in an empty hall. They're very, very loud, but they're never answered. And, when your faith deepens into adolescence, as mine sure did, oh, hell it did. Being on fire for God was everything. Your time of questioning, your identity formation is really on supercharge, and it's met with these warnings, again, against doubt, rebellion against God, and your natural exploration, where you're equating curiosity often with disobedience, and you're instilling fear instead of intellectual autonomy, and your thoughts sort of become this forbidden garden. And for some of us, we kind of let ourselves go there, this secret garden, whether it's sexual thoughts or something else, just thoughts about maybe secular music isn't so bad. Maybe I can listen to Bon Jovi and I won't go to hell for it, And, you have these forbidden gardens, but you know that you need to get rid of them if you're going to end up being useful to God. And you sort of feel like you're back in the Garden of Eden with that fruit right in front of you. And Satan saying, don't worry about it. Just eat that fruit. It's okay. It's okay. And you're telling yourself, I already know how this story ends. If I eat this fruit, I'm in trouble. I'm up a creek without a paddle, but I want to eat that fruit anyway. And so your unmet needs and your need to just develop and grow as a human, just a basic human being, it gets completely, like the well gets poisoned. You can't get near that. And again, every unspoken question and emotion becomes a battleground. And you are at war with yourself. And the question of simply, are you sinful or are you simply human? and it's pounding at you. Are you sinful or are you just human? Emotional highs, I think from all missions trips and all that stuff, they can reinforce the belief that God is real and active, and they give you that sense of divine proof. And they're masking the transactional nature of the faith, and this rush feels like you're, sort of flying, like you've got wings now, and yet it's amazing. You feel like you're flying into the heavenlies, as it were, but you're still so tethered to the ground. And you're straining against the weight, and you feel like Jesus says, my burden is easy, my yoke is light. And you're like, what's wrong with me? Because it doesn't feel like that. It doesn't feel like that. And again, these are dopamine, adrenaline surges. They sort of mimic the effects of an addiction. And they bring us in our teenage years to the church's emotional highs as evidence that you're involved in something very real. And the social pressures increase, purity culture, obedience to authority, evangelism, all these acts of devotion. They're tying your worthiness into it all. And you're like, yeah, the biggest question in the room is, am I worthy? And theologically, I was not worthy. Christ has declared me worthy because of, God has declared, the Father's declared me worthy because of Christ. So I've been declared worthy. I'm on my way to being actually made worthy in glory. And so the only real issue right now is simply, am I going to live out this worthiness and bask in the glory of the worthiness that God has declared me to be in, and I'm going to eventually experience in the future. And you just feel like, I should feel like the most worthy person on the planet. The King of the universe became a human and died for me. Why do I still feel unworthy? And of course, it's because it's all mythology. It's all bullshit. But you think you've got the answers, and so you think you've got the path to having your needs met. And there's such a facade, especially the facades of spiritual growth. They're suppressing so much authenticity that's just waiting there to come. It's beneath the surface. Your individuality, it's getting suppressed and chipped away, and your innermost questions are being suppressed, and it's almost like your true self becomes a bit of a ghost. It's like it's lingering at the edge. That you have become this carefully curated persona of Christianity, and your true self is just this ghost on the side saying, I'd like to have a chat with you, please. We have some problems here. Houston, we have a problem. It's just lingering there, and your Christian created persona just dominates. And sometimes for a lot of us, it was for years. I mean, for me, it was 43 years. And by early adulthood, your faith has become so intertwined with your identity and with your worthiness, that question that shouldn't even be a question, but is. And you begin to define yourself not by your personal values and your questions and your path, but by how well you embody the church's ideals. And the reflection that you see in the mirror is no longer you. It's this mosaic of the expectations that have been pieced together by others and eventually by you yourself. And when you merge faith and self, and you create this sense of identity, it is so fragile, but it feels like the only thing you've got. It's like this is the best we've got. This fragile framework. When I look in the mirror, I see myself. I think this is the best I can get. Is I want to see Jesus in the mirror when I see myself. Jesus living in me, working in me. And it can be shattered so badly. Especially, again, if you fail the expectations of the community. But you in the process, you have lost sight. I have lost sight of my own inner reflection, of my own unmet needs that are crying out this whole time saying, excuse me, we have a problem. Can we please talk about it? You have not actually started living your life. Let's identify your real unmet needs, not the fake ones that Christianity has imposed on you. There are real needs. Let's get to them, get the garbage to the side, get to the real needs, and let's talk about who you are as a human. But the fear of hell and the promises of heaven dominate the conversation. They serve as the motivators to keep you faithful and on track, even when religion and Christianity feels so hollow and oppressive. The fears act as emotional shackles. They keep you in line, and they discourage any kind of critical examination. And so what I want to get to in a minute here is asking you about these unmet needs. What are the unmet needs that are on your mind as I'm going through this? What are the unmet needs that you're thinking about that are coming to your mind, popping in your head, saying, yeah, we need to get rid of these weeds and say, what are actual unmet needs that have been masked by this worldview? So I'm going to finish up a few final notes here and then get to the comments. It becomes a bit of a cycle, self-fulfilling cycle. The more you depend on faith, the more you sort of learn to address your emotional needs independently, but through Christ, you begin to feel like you're doing okay. But in reality, you have this sort of sub-cycle going on where you're on the surface, you feel like you can kind of meet your needs. Okay, go back to church, your needs are met. Go back to the Bible and your needs are met. But on the inside, there's these other set of needs cycling saying, my personality, my psyche, my humanness is on house arrest. I am trapped within the walls of a system that is promising me complete liberation, but has delivered nothing but chains. And when you perceive your spiritual growth as a deepening of your life, you're like, I'm going to the deeper levels of my humanness. It's actually just a tether. It's a tether that's keeping you from stepping into your own power, your own autonomy, your own agency. And your dreams of your sort of inner humanness, they keep on shrinking to fit the narrative of these narrow corridors of faith and belief. It's like you're building a wall of invisible bricks. You can't see it, but you're building it higher and higher throughout the years. Thus, when you finally escape, there's a lot of bricks to undo, to break back down. And then I think the cognitive dissonance really sets in. Life's challenges, marriages don't always work. The issues with kids, issues with money, issues with health, loss, betrayal, doubts. They create these cracks in the belief system, and they're sort of dismissed for a while as spiritual attacks. Maybe it's your personal failure. But they begin to sort of let the light of reality through, and it's terrifying, but it is illuminating if you let it. But it prevents you from addressing the root of your struggles, because it keeps trapping you in the cycle of self-shame. Like, yeah, your life isn't working out so well, isn't it? That's your fault. That's further proof of what we said to you in your childhood. You are unworthy. You are bad. You are a child of Adam, daughter of Eve. You are born in sin, and your righteousness is like a filthy rag. And when you get this cycle just keeps on going. Becomes this painful reminder that you are, again, inadequate. The message you've been hearing since you're a baby. And you double down on prayers and rituals. You want to patch these fractures in your faith. And when the prayers go unanswered, you assume it's due to a lack of faith or sin. And again, you feel even worse. And again, your unmet needs are in there crying. And it reminds me of that movie, those movies, what is it? The Disney one. What's that Disney movie? I'll think of it. Look it up here. I know it. Let's see here. Inside Out. That's it. The Inside Out movie is like you've got these personalities arguing inside of you. And that, by the way, if you haven't seen Inside Out, I know it's a kids movie. It's cartoony, but it's actually quite insightful. I would say if you've never seen it, it's worth it. It's almost like talking about psychology in a very lighthearted way. But the issue of the dissonance, the cognitive dissonance, as it grows, you get to a point where you really do have glimmers of a chance to say, there is something else going on here. This is a battlefield. Your mind is a battlefield. And your voice, if you let it, will get louder. And this, this mixture, this cacophony of self-doubt and fear that's drowning out your yearning for the truth. Eventually, if you let it, you will realize, I have a voice in this. I have something to say. It isn't an issue of sit down and let God talk more. It's like God has had plenty of time to talk between the Bible and the verses and the sermons and the songs and the worship services and the missions trips. God has had plenty of time to talk. And if he could have fixed this and fixed your unmet needs, we're talking about the God of the universe. He knows your unmet needs because he designed them, right? Supposedly. He knows what they are. He knows how to see them clearer than everyone else, and he can meet them. So if you are a child of the King and he has met your deepest needs, then why the hell aren't you happy? Why aren't you the most joyful person on the planet? I've said this before, but one of the things that was like an early seed to me in my deconstruction was seeing people who were constantly listening to Christian radio in my life, family members, constantly listening to Christian radio, where it wasn't just like generic stuff. It was hardcore preaching of the gospel mixed in throughout it. Yes, there was some exposition of the book of Revelation here or there, but a lot of it kept on going back to the gospel, the gospel, the gospel. People that their bread and butter was the gospel of Jesus Christ. You're a horrible sinner. You deserve punishment. Christ is a savior. Christ died for God to take the punishment that God was going to inflict on you. He died in your place, and he now offers you that as a free gift. If you'll take it, you're saved. You're redeemed. He's covering you with his righteousness. Will you accept his free gift? And to see people that are entrenched in both the very simplistic message of that, but also the deep, spiritual ramifications of that, to see them dwelling on that for decades, and to be the most cantankerous, ugly, nasty, self-centered people on the planet. I just thought to myself, there's no power here. There's no power here. And I think what I'm asking us to do is to invite ourselves both to identify these for the sake of just figuring out what's happened, but also to talk about our own healing, is to say, we have to find a way to separate ourselves from the Christian narrative. And even after we've escaped it, the narrative's still there in a lot of our heads. I mean, some of you talk to me, personally about some of your struggles with this stuff, whether it's a continued fear of hell or something else. But we have these narratives so deeply in our hearts and our heads that we can't easily separate them. And I think we become blind to our unmet needs, to our true needs. We've been so enmeshed in our faith, we've lost touch with our own desires, our own personalities, our own personhood. Your thoughts and the church's thoughts have been blurred. Your thoughts and the Bible's thoughts are blurred. They become one and the same in a sense. You can't tell where one begins and one ends. And when your emotional landscape gets overrun by the script of the Christian faith, and there's no room for personal exploration, there's no room for your inner voice, you've just been drowned out by it all. And the quiet whispers of your own personhood that's just trying so hard to come out, and being told, no, shut up and let God talk. And eventually, you've been overpowered over and over by the noise of the obligation. You're obligated to honor God, to live for God, to thank God. When you finally get to a point where you begin to say, I see it. I see what this is, something that was done to me. I see it. These are psychological wounds. And I have to have a vision. I have to have a path for freedom from this stuff. I have to stop outsourcing my personhood, outsourcing my healing. I have to get out of these cycles for real. If I want real lasting growth, if I want to embrace who I really am, I've got to figure out, what have I been asking for? I think I've been asking for God to make me more holy. I think I've been asking for God to make me a useful vessel for his kingdom. I think I've been asking for God to answer my prayers and to show me his will and for me to align with that will. That's not what your inner person is screaming. And it's time for that voice to be heard. It's time for the bricks to come down. When you have this cognitive dissonance, everything from your own voice being suppressed, your own independent thought being masked or mistaken for rebellion, when your instincts have been pushed aside, your instincts eventually kind of become like strangers to you. You feel weird thinking about, what do I want? Who am I really? That becomes a dangerous thought to you. It becomes very unwelcome in the fortress of faith, as it were. Don't lean on your own understanding. You are inherently untrustworthy. But when you get back to it, you have a few basic fundamental needs, and I do too. We need to be safe. We need to be secure. We need to have connection. We need to have belonging. We need to have some kind of purpose and meaning that we find or create, in my opinion. We need to have some kind of autonomy and freedom and agency. We need to figure out our identity and in an authentic way. We need to find paths forward to take the things that interest us, that make us thrive and dance, the topics and the hobbies, for us to master certain things and feel competent and like we're learning new things and bringing things to the table where we can help the world, to learn more for our own sake and then help other people with our talents. That we have hope and optimism that the future is going to be okay. That there's a sense of fairness and justice that we can pursue in this world. Like if someone slights me, there's going to be a sense it's going to be made right, not by a God, but by our community, by the fact that equity and fairness are valued and pursued in our world. and that we're going to uphold ethical standards. We need a sense of transcendence in all. Again, I think we mistake it as Christians. It's all about God, but it's not. There is a transcendence in an all. When you look up at the night sky and realize the beauty of the night sky and how small we are, there is an aesthetic value where there are moments in life, whether you're talking about the moments like making love, or being in deep meditation, or just watching the breathtaking sunset, appreciating art. You have to have some kind of transcendence in all in your life. And of course, healing and growth is a big deal, where we're learning to heal from the wounds that we've had and grow into better and better people. But to me, when I look at this stuff and I say, what in the world did Christianity do to distract us from our unmet needs? Why did it distract us from our unmet needs? And why can't we see them well? And what do I do now that I'm out? What do I do to embrace myself? And I know self-love can be a double-edged sword. For a lot of us, we feel like it's hard for us. It's hard for us to go down that path. I do encourage you, as much as I know there's some woo-woo that can occur with the self-love stuff. I think if you just take it at face value, it actually has incredible value to say that. Love yourself, especially when you're coming out of Christianity. You've been taught to not love yourself. That loving yourself is perhaps one of the biggest enemies. It's so linked to pride. And to say to yourself, my unmet needs have been sitting right beneath the surface this whole time. And a big part of this journey that I'm going through, and a big part of the angst, is I don't know myself. I don't know who I am, and I don't know what I want, and I don't know what it means to thrive anymore, because Christianity distorted it for so long, for decades. And I do want to encourage you, and I apologize that took longer than I thought. But I'm going to be unpacking in different ways through the monologue I talked about at the beginning, as well as through some other interwoven projects. This idea that our unmet needs have been completely distorted and masked by our journey out of Christianity, through and out of Christianity. And that for a lot of us, if we're going to really heal, you got to get back to your childhood and say, what was my internal voice screaming for as a child? Maybe it was screaming as you're being disciplined and you're being spanked, or worse, saying, I don't think my body should be hit this way. And ever since then, you've got this unmet need that says, my bodily autonomy has been violated. I don't think I should have been physically attacked that way. But you don't have the words for it, perhaps. And perhaps even now, you're like, I wouldn't have said that, but now that you mention it, maybe a part of me has been screaming out this whole time to say, why was I hit so hard as a kid? Why? Or maybe, the messages of the worthiness. And again, I think worthiness is such a distorted concept that we cling to it even as deconverted people, to say you didn't need Christ to be worthy, you're worthy. No. You're not worthy or unworthy. Worthiness is not a thing. But, use the crutch for now if you have to, but please try to move away from it. You're not worthy. It's not a thing. But, because we were taught that was the chain around our necks for so long, we get to a point where we feel like that's the big war in our minds. Am I worthy of love? And perhaps we would say, it doesn't matter whether God loves me, because he's not there. But we still struggle with it in our human relationships, because a lot of people do mistreat us. People do say, you're not worthy to be loved or admired. I know I'm married to you, but I'm not going to touch you. Or I know I'm married to you, but I'm not going to respect you and be kind to you. I'm not going to be gentle with you, whatever. And you feel like, well, maybe there's some kind of interconnectedness here, that I really am unworthy of love. There's something deficient about me. And that's why my spouse is treating me this way, because I really am a bad person, Our unmet needs, in my opinion, are screaming out. And I think the faith has done two things, at least many things, but two things that come to mind. It has created false unmet needs, of course, in its theology, and it has masked your real unmet needs. And so as we heal, for me, at least personally, a lot of this is getting to those two sides, saying, what are the lies I've been told, and what's the truth of who I am that I've never, where I need to go back and sort of reparent myself. And as it were, say to yourself, how do I send messages through time back to myself as a kid, if you could? Maybe I'll write a book about that, a fiction book. But how do you send messages through time back to yourself? It's funny, the other day, I was talking to my little girl and Abby. I took them all at the same time. But I was saying good night to Abby. She's 7, and she was saying, you know what, Daddy? I wish I had a time machine. And I said, what would you do with it? It's an interesting topic. What would you do with a time machine? And she said, I would go back in time to before a bunch of things happened to our family. And I would tell everybody that God's not real. I would tell everybody that this is mythology. And I would tell everybody that their God would be a really bad God. And it's a good thing he's not real. And obviously, you just get choked up even hearing those words out of your little girl's mouth. But it's that concept. What if you could go back in time to when your unmet needs were still forming, and your ability to perceive your needs was forming, and your ability to be told, false needs, about theology and righteousness and all that? What if you could go back and undo some of that? And as much as that's obviously just fantasy and fiction, if to think about trying to actually do that, you sort of have to mentally go through those steps, as if you're telling yourself back in time, look, kiddo, life's different than you thought. If you want to heal little Timmy, you got to figure out what happened. I've told people before this story. This is not per se directly related to what I was going to say here, but I've told this story a couple times, especially on the Harmonic Raw channel, about when I was a kid, my dad used to scream at my mom like all the time at night. So we kids would go to bed and he would just scream his head off at her. And the other kids seemed like they went to sleep. There were 4 of us. Just like I have 4 kids. There were 4 of us when I was growing up. And everyone else seemed to go to sleep, but I would sit at the top of the stairs and I would make sure I was super quiet. And I would sit and listen because I wanted to go down if I could and protect her, protect my mom, and I couldn't. And every maybe 20 days or something, I would go down and say, I'm thirsty, I need some water, just to break up the fight. But most of the time I felt like I was not really welcome to do that. And I would have been, violating their space and what was going on. It's a hard thing to process as a kid. But I remember for years, I would sit at the top of the stairs and just cry as he berated my lovely mother. And it's like you got to go back to that child, You got to go back to that child sitting at the top of the stairs and say, you have some unmet needs here. And I want to tell you, if you let this thing get out of control in your heart, in your psychology, in your emotions, it's going to rock the rest of your life. And some of you, I'm sure, could tell me stories like that are much, much, much more intense, where you have to go back and figure out what were the unmet needs that were happening, and how did Christianity ignore your real needs, distort them, and tell you lies. And then hopefully if we can get to sort of get those things to the side and say, all right, well, now that the lies are out for the most part, let's rebuild. And for a lot of us, the issue of safety and kindness is that's the most fundamental stuff on the planet. But as kids, so many of us did not feel safe. And as kids, so many of us did not feel like kindness was coming toward us. And so when you mix that, of course, with the unworthiness messaging, it's just, you have no chance. Your psychology goes off the rails from the earliest days. And your unmet needs get distorted and ignored. You needed kindness. And especially when you get told, oh, God is kind, but if you don't do it his way, he's going to blast you forever. Even the urge and the need for kindness from those around you and safety becomes very distorted. So on that note, again, I've went further than I thought here with my notes as well as my thinking. This was a bit more of a monologue than I meant it to be, and I'm sorry about that. But there's a lot to unpack. Man, is there a lot to unpack. But I just wanted to ask if you haven't, I'm going to read through the comments here. Just share with me What are some of the unmet needs that you feel like Christianity distorted and made you ignore, and the ways that it kept you from just learning to see yourself accurately? It's hard. It's hard stuff. See here, Steven says it can be hard to face ourselves. Yeah, I know that was a comment from a while ago, but it's going back to where I left off. It is hard to face ourselves. It is. Thank you, Dan. Thank you so much for the wisdom you all give right back to me. I feel like every time I share something that I hope is helpful, I get helped just as much in return. Today, I don't need any outside validation from anyone or anything to feel good about myself. It's a kick-ass life. Yeah, being able to depend only on yourself for validation is so critical. Well said, John. Concerning aloneness and introversion and season appropriate, I love walking alone in snowstorms. The gray is beautiful and falling snow absorbs a bit of sound. Quite beautiful for me. Yeah. Awesome stuff. I love that. Love it. Yeah, nature walks are awesome. Absolutely have to die to self was the message. The Peace Zone says the crazy thing is Jesus is always better than you, better than everything. Yeah, exactly. Jesus is better than you. And really, in some ways, he's like the surrogate, right? He's the surrogate there to replace you. And the goal is, even the Bible says, when you die, the eternal life and the promise that you have, your hope is to see him face to face, and in seeing him, you will be like him. And he will transform you. The goal is to get rid of you and to have Jesus take over. The goal is to be an empty vessel. And the more you empty yourself of you, he will be able to shine brighter, and through the Holy Spirit take over. And they're just gutting you of any sense of your self appreciation. Again, I want to steer clear of the word worth if I can, but the sense of that you have some way of validating who you are, and just at least in terms of how you do see yourself, to say, I do see myself as worth pursuing safety and finding kindness and love. Emptying yourself to be filled is such an oxymoron when it's applied to the Holy Spirit, which is totally confusing. Yeah, it really, really is. I agree with you that I chased the same illusion in a toxic relationship, blinded to the manipulation and narcissistic behavior. It's just like my faith in God. I was angry for not questioning more. Yeah, agreed. Yeah, we all should have questioned so much more. Absolutely. Yeah. And a lot of this is realizing exactly that, realizing what kind of relationship we were in. Just like in human relationships, a lot of us realize we have been stuck in narcissistic, abusive relationships. To realize that's what, if God had been real, that's what he was. But realizing that he's not real, it's still a narcissistic system. It's an abusive system we were stuck in. Yeah. You never stop being a sinner, so never really saved. Yeah, exactly. You think you're never really past the worst parts of who you are, because you can't ever get rid of the sin. The vibration of nature is what's real in life. Surround yourself with nature as much as possible. Everything changes. Yeah, I agree. It's so beautiful to be connected with the planet and the stars. It's one of my life goals, is to move to a place where I can see the stars better at night, every night. Just either, whether it's 5 minutes or 30 minutes every night, just like sit there with both just my eyes and also with a telescope, and just soak up the beauty of the universe. My ex-fiance is Muslim. The shame and guilt she felt in our relationship felt like there were additional people in it, along with God, making it a relationship of 5 entities: me, her, guilt, shame, God. Yeah, it's crazy. That's crazy. But for so many people, that's exactly what religion does. It's hard to walk into the woods angry and not be peaceful when you leave the woods. Yeah, agreed. Or to go to the mountains. Oh, you're speaking my language there, John. Can't wait. I'm not in the worst place ever. It's not like I'm in New York City. My apologies to anyone in New York. I hate concrete with a passion. My apologies to those of you that love cities. I hate concrete. I am in a suburb of Atlanta, which I have a lot of trees around me, but I want my nearest neighbors to be about 2 miles away, so I'll get there. It's such an eye-opener to see when it finally hits the light. Yeah, it is. It's crazy. It's super hard to believe she was so way up on that throne. Now it's a pile of garbage, just like the Bible, and so loving, the so loving God whom I've shared every moment with of my life. Yeah, it is. It's just crazy to think about. It's hard to wrap your mind around, but you have to take it one step at a time and hopefully do some restarts of who you are and what you want to do with the rest of your life. Sounds like a very lonely experience where one might feel empty and unfulfilled, often by promises of fulfillment. Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. Jerwalk, great way of putting it. Yeah, it's like you have so many promises to claim in the Bible. Like God is promising you this and that. He's fulfilling you this way, that way, every which way. He's the God of so many wonderful, he's the God who owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. So what are you fussing about? And you're like, but I feel so empty and unfulfilled. How can you? It's your fault. Oh, it's crazy. Jim, hey Tim from New Zealand, wife and family at church, me at home listening to you fully deconstructed. That's awesome, Jim. But I'm so sorry your wife and family are at church. That's got to be heartbreaking. It's a very tough situation. Very, very tough situation. Light burden sounds very gaslighting and a bit thought-stopping. Yeah, very true. Very well put. Becca's here, Faith Exposed. By the way, please do check out her channel. She's doing great work. I didn't realize I had never experienced true autonomy and self-esteem until I left Christianity and my Christian spouse. Yeah, it's so heartbreaking. But yeah, it's for a lot of us, we have never really lived a day of our lives. We've never really known who we are until we escape some of these systems. But I know it's been a hard journey for you, and I certainly wish for more smooth paths going forward. The memories, the good times with my Christian brother and sisters, the family vibe, the time with her, all these memories are shaded because I think I should have known better. Yeah, it's very, very different. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. And it's like, wow, what was I in? And why couldn't I see it? Why was I in love with my captor? Why did I think this good God was so good? He's not good. He's a psychopath. We would not want Yahweh to be real if he could be. I buried my needs that now I'm exploring and starting to be open of what I can offer myself and others. Yeah, Susanna, that's a great way to put it. Great way to put it. Yeah, for a lot of us, this journey really is exploring and starting over. And for so many of us, it's like the moment you deconvert, or at least the moment you can admit to yourself, I'm definitely not a Christian anymore, it is not the end of the journey in so many ways. It's just the beginning. It's a magical journey, and it's certainly worth taking, but it's the beginning. And a lot of it is beautiful, but a lot of it is very painful. Anne-Marie is in the house. Great to see you, Anne-Marie. Thank you so much for joining us. I've missed you, and again, I'm sorry I've missed doing the live stream so much. I'm trying my best to get back to them ASAP, but a lot of irons in the fire, a lot of moving parts in my life right now, but trying my best to get back to this ASAP. I love it, both for the connection with you all, but also just so many good thoughts in the comments. And I for anyone that hasn't seen me before, I've said this before, when the live streams end, I don't walk away. I'm like, oh, we're done. You take a break. I immediately stay here, end the stream, and I go through the comments right away. And just in case the browser closes or something and I can't get back to them, some of the comments are so helpful and so good, and just they kind of lead me down these amazing mental trails. I love it. So thank you all for being such a help to me. But thank you so much for joining us. It's a game of psychology, and I ain't playing anymore. Simple. Yeah, I love it. John, you got a great way of putting it getting down to the bottom line. It's a great way to put it. Yeah, we don't play that. Yep. It's amazing. What Tim is doing every episode like this is processing pain. Everyone should be talking about the same things he's talking about to get off your freaking chest and live free. Yeah, we definitely have a lot of work to do. And like Stephen says, shadow work, whatever you want to call it. There's a lot of layers to this. And the more we understand that this was a system, it was something done to us, it was psychologically manipulative, and it was propaganda, it was done to us intentionally, and we were part of it. We eventually did it to other people too. We're just as culpable. But eventually you have to realize that this is, in many ways, it's not just our parents or our pastor. It's like, this is, thousands of years worth of dead men speaking, but it's time for them to rest in peace, as it were, and to stop talking into our lives. But we'll speak to our own lives from this point on. My hubs listened to a Neil deGrasse Tyson podcast about truth claims today. There may be hope for him to break free of his chains. That's awesome. That's awesome. I love seeing Neil deGrasse Tyson stuff. Someday I'm going to get him on here. I've tried a few times, but he's too busy, I'm sure, to see my messages. But someday I'll get him on here. The way they make you believe that in the grand scheme of things, the little things don't matter as long as you believe one day all will be revealed. So just wait till then. Just have faith. Yeah, it's a great way to put it. Yeah, it's very, very true. Your questions don't need to be bothersome to you. Ignore the cognitive dissonance. Ignore the man behind the curtain. God will take care of everything. And in many ways, for many of us, the issue was not just saying, wait and, ask your questions, but just trust God will answer them. For a lot of us, it became stop asking questions because God doesn't want this to be a transaction of, hey, I've got all the answers. I'm the answer man. It's the question of, I want you to just trust me. Like a little child might say, Daddy, we're here. How are we going to get home? And, how does the car work? And why are you touching the gas pedal with your foot? Like, how does this car work? I've got so many questions. And the daddy just saying, just trust me. I'm not going to explain how a car works right now, but trust me, I'll get you home. And it's like that. Like the point of it was to say, stop asking the questions. Just trust your father. Your father loves you and he will take you home. And it will be worth it in the end if you stop trying to say that this is a process of getting all of your questions answered. And this is a process of simply resting. Rest in the Lord. That's what they want you to do. It's another form of psychological manipulation and mind control. Every year I tell the hubs Merry Christmas. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. I love it. Let's see here. Anne-Marie, do you want to come to my time machine? We stop somewhere between 68 and 70. Yeah. For a lot of us, we need a time machine that goes back. Thank you, Anne-Marie. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. There's some wheels in motion for sure. Try my best. Yeah, it's so much I could say, but I'll hold off for now. But yeah, there's a lot going on. And these kids deserve to be safe. They really do. I'm from the future, and we need to be together because our children will achieve world peace. I would love to know that I don't think we're going to be able to know that in our generation, but to know that they achieve world peace someday would be a great dream. Let's see here. Thank you for using your last 2% of your battery to send this message. That is definitely commitment. I appreciate that. What if we could go back in time and warn all the countries and people not to fall for faith? We could have been so much more kind and loving to us as humans, but also animals and nature. Yeah, and in some ways, I do wonder. I think maybe one-on-one conversations could have made a difference. If we could talk to all of humanity, I do wonder if we would have been able to make a difference or not. There is something addictive about human nature, something about us that is very willing to fall for deception. But yeah, if we could do it on a one-on-one basis, go back to your own self, go back to your parents, when they were kids and help them escape. It's interesting. I think if I may consider doing the story I told you about what my little girl Abby said to me as she wants a time machine. I've thought about writing a book about that, like that exact story. I think I might consider it. It's interesting topic. Thank you, girl. Yeah, it's interesting to bring up these topics. I don't bring them up to solicit your sympathy. Of course, I appreciate that you all do care about me, but hopefully makes it relatable to what we're all going through. I know that for every story I bring up that sounds horrific, the rest of you could bring up something that sounds just as bad. It's just no comparison. Of course, we're all just dealing with our own past and dealing with our current and future situations. To hear, Tim, I can relate, but I didn't find the faith till the foster system and was told how my dad failed me, but a Heavenly Father would never fail me. Yeah, that's an interesting situation. I have not. Most of the people that I interview, it's more the other way where they grew up in it. But yeah, I could see for sure that where, if it's that tangible, it's like the father figure is so powerful in your life at that level. I'm so sorry you had to go through that. And obviously the lies that they're telling you. As a child, the need for parental safety and connection is so great. And to be told lies and say there's a Heavenly Father that's just watching you and loving you and He cares about you. They're preying on your deepest unmet needs. Pure UI. Christianity is the ultimate double bind, mental torture. It has taken me a lifetime to untangle the tentacles from my brain. The journey out can be terrifying, but worth every future moment. Yeah, agreed, 100%. Yeah, it's a great way to put it. I was met with Christianity in my most vulnerable time of life as a kid needing something to help. Now I understand the psychology behind it all. It's all psychological. Yeah, for sure. Susan says, that's horrible that you had to go through that as a child. Heartbreaking. Did you ever confront your father about his unconscionable behavior in later years? Susan, that's an interesting question. It looks like we're almost out of time here, but or almost out of comments, so I'll wrap up soon. But I did in a couple ways. I tried to address him face to face, and he just got upset and told me he wished I'd never been born, and told me to get out of his house and never come back. So it did not work out very well. We kind of got reconnected, as it were, a little bit in life, because he kind of mentally, physically went downhill in his later years. He basically became a shell of himself, but before his death, and he died in 2019, right before my deconversion, ironically. But for the last 3 or 4 years, he was in bed 23 hours a day. So he kind of just became a shell of himself. I don't know if it was related, directly related, or if it was just a medical thing, but it kind of just eventually, it wasn't worth talking about it. It just became a quick, I'd come over and say hello, and he'd say hello, he'd act like, nothing ever happened. He forgot about it all. And I kind of sort of swept it under the rug in a sense for the sake of peace. And it just became a non-issue for many years, actually, towards the end of his life. So it was, but I did actually, something that was healing to me. I published 2 books. One of them was a book of poetry. And in that book, there's a lot about my dad. And that was to me, to write a book of poetry and to publish it was a way of saying, this is me. This is who I am. This is my journey, and this pain is real. So that was my confrontation. I don't know that he ever read it for sure. I think he may have read part of it. And what I do remember is he read enough of it to close the poetry book and start crying. And he asked me to just burn every copy of it, which of course, at that point it was not just written, it was published. So, but that was my journey. Interesting parts of my story. Thank you, Tim. Love your insights and questions. Thank you so much. Let me read your title here. Self-clasping overhead First Amendment holder. Interesting handle. I like that. Very cool. Thank you for being with us. Unmet needs from religion, the truth. Lies about love and acceptance to dull the emotional pain of reality, of pain and injustice happening. Lies of justice in an afterlife, and emotional band-aid. Yeah. Very well said. I like that summary a lot. That's a good way to put it. And it's interesting how so many of these unmet needs, when you really get down to it, when you really unpack some of these layers of the onion, some of these unmet needs are in so many ways that you said the word dulling the pain. And it's interesting how they create a new kind of pain by the frequent implication that they give that if Christianity is not real, then life's not worth living. So they kind of create all these fake unmet needs, and they create and they dull your pain, and they give you this false sense of reality. But then they kind of say, if Jesus weren't real, and nihilism is an accurate way of seeing the world, then life is not worth living. And they kind of create this second level of needs of you need, as a deconverted person, to find something transcendent. Otherwise, your life is just utter meaningless. You might as well just go end it now. Why are you living another day if it doesn't matter? And they really they create. It's like their parting shot. Okay, so you're leaving Christianity. All right, fine. Go ahead, get out. The hell with you. But on their way out, understand that you now have bigger unmet needs that we're going to try to impose on you. You need to find some kind of new meaning and purpose, and you need to explain yourself. It's interesting how that works. But lies upon lies. Every day I live in constant fear that Trump will deport my Latina mother-in-law. Let's see here. I'm so sorry for your situation, man. It's tough stuff. I hope good things for your family. I really do. Black Handel, when I was a teen, I asked my youth pastor, if God knows my heart, why would I lie to him and say I understand and I'm ready when I'm not? Lying to God seems wrong. He just walked off. Yeah, it's interesting that sometimes we get surfacey answers. Sometimes pastors and youth pastors will just tell us, they'll ignore our questions and say you're asking the wrong questions. But we were told, of course, you can't lie to God. But yeah, it's for a lot of us, we were told you're in a sense constantly lying to God, because God knows your heart, and He knows how wicked you are, and that you are constantly trying to hide your sin from Him. That it's like a nonstop thing. You are in a constant effort to hide your sin, and He wants you to be forgiven for your sin, but He wants you to first confess it. So confession is the name of the game. Confession is the business of Christianity. Confess your sins. Find some way, even to the point where you're saying, God, I've got hidden sins that I don't even know about, but they must be there somewhere. Forgive me for those too. Forgive me for my sins of commission and omission. I've watched many of your interviews, so I kind of know what you believe, but do you believe there's anything after death? Black Kendall, thanks for your question. I personally do not. No, I do not think there's anything after death. I think in a similar sense that you might say, is there anything after death for a turtle? Is there anything after death for a squirrel, for a tree? I think most of us would conclude probably the tree is not going to a tree heaven. The turtle's not going to a turtle heaven. We're not special. We feel special, and in some ways we have to live like we're special, just the way our world works. But we're actually not special, and I know for a lot of people that's hard pill to swallow. But we are at the end of a chain. We're currently at the end of a chain, but that chain will continue long after us. We're at the end of a chain of animals that have evolved and creatures that have evolved, and we are animals. And if we're going to say that there's something after life for us, then there's no reason to not conclude that there's something after life for every other animal that's ever lived. Everything from the smallest microbes up to squirrels and primates, up to us, to elephants, everything. Like why are we the only ones that get an afterlife? Consciousness does not suddenly create an afterlife. Consciousness just makes us think different questions than before. So I don't think there's anything. The idea of energy changing form, I don't think we'll be conscious of anything in that level. No, personally, I'm not saying it's wrong for someone else to go down that path, but no, I don't think we're going to sense that we've gone on to some higher level, some kind of reincarnation. We've changed form. Energy changing form, I don't think has anything to do with us going somewhere when we die. I think we're mixing metaphysical stuff and spiritual stuff in a way that we're confusing ourselves, in my opinion. So yeah, energy doesn't get destroyed; it just takes a different form. But that doesn't mean we're going to be conscious when we die, in the afterlife. I don't think there's any afterlife. I would love to be delightfully surprised. Hopefully, it's a good place if we go there. With Ted Danza, but no, I don't think we go somewhere. I definitely don't believe in like the biblical concept of heaven or hell anymore. And when you look a lot of that too, Black Kendall, if you look at the history of mythology, you really do see that the stories about heaven and hell evolved exponentially. In the Old Testament, it was more like the what I've learned recently is the Minecraft netherworld, just like a zombie place where you just kind of walk around and just kind of sleep eternity away. You're kind of just lying in caves, and life's kind of over. It's kind of boring, and you just kind of spend your life as a zombie in a cave. And that changed when they got taken away to Persia, got exposed to Zoroastrianism, where they had a different belief, where that there's going to be this eventual, burning up of everything. But if you're righteous, your righteousness will survive, your goodness will survive. So you have to be a good person, so that when that wave of fire, as it were, comes, burns everything up, you've got something that will survive. Eventually, you got, of course, Greco-Roman concepts of hell woven in, Tartarus and Hades, which show up in the New Testament. It's an evolution. It's an evolution. I don't think the Old Testament people thought of heaven and hell the same way. And, just because it's evolved this way doesn't mean we need to stop there and say, well, is this one version that we've inherited, like all these versions of heaven and hell that have evolved and syncretized, we finally got this one. Is this one right? Or, well, we could address 100 other versions of it. I personally don't think any of them are real, but I understand, though, that the drive behind it is to say, I want to feel like my life has got greater meaning than it does, and that there is some kind of, transcendent purpose and a transcendent justice. It hurts to lose that stuff. It really does. But I think we are deceiving ourselves if we think it's out there. Excuse me. Well, thank you so much. We're here at about an hour and a half, which is longer than I thought. Didn't expect to be this long, but appreciate so much you all being here. Thank you so much for your thoughts on this. Please keep thinking about it. If you all have any thoughts that come to mind later, please feel free to message me. If anybody isn't on Facebook with me and wants to chat or even consider doing an interview, my handle is @HarmonicTim. But add me on Facebook, send me a message. By the way, I am a little backed up on messages right now, so if you send me a message, please give me a little bit of time. Life's busy again with 4 kids, but I will get back to you eventually. Appreciate your patience. And again, wanted to say too, just one last maybe final thought. For those of you that are looking at the end of the year here and sort of the idea of a New Year's resolution, which I know some people love to do, some people think it's irrelevant because you kind of give up after the second or third day. But whether you're looking at New Year's resolutions or just kind of acknowledging the seasons are changing, the calendar's changing, I just wanted to, in case I don't jump on before the New Year's, maybe I will, hopefully I will, but in case I don't, I just want to make sure I wish you all a good 2025. I know there's a lot of scary stuff going on with politics. There's a lot of scary stuff going on in a lot of our personal relationships. And my heart's broken for so many of us in the group. So a lot of you have told me your stories. Gosh, it's heavy. It's heavy stuff that so many of us are going through, and especially when children are involved. I wish good things for you. I know that doesn't mean anything. It's not a blessing. It's not sending you a vibe. I don't believe in vibes. I'm not sending you any energy. I'm just saying I wish good things for you. I wish that there was something I could do for so many of you that are hurting. But you come to mind, so much throughout each day and each week. I know that there's a lot of pain in this group, especially in the groups where a lot of the pain is related to family members and loved ones that are mistreating you and ignoring you, even aggressively hurting you because you have lost your faith, because you've walked away from Christianity. Man, oh man, I know that's the pain in some of those situations is absolutely endless, and it will affect you probably till the day you die. And I know that's a very hard burden to carry. So turtles go to heaven too. Thank you, Mean Pearl, for clarifying that. Yeah. And all dogs go to heaven, right? So, again, let's do our best. Let's show up big in 2025. I'll be doing as much as I can on this channel, and hopefully a lot more than even expected. I've got a lot of irons in the fire for this channel. I'm trying to find time to move all forward, and once I do, I'm going to try to not look back. But let's make 2025 a year where we just move a lot of big rocks and just keep freeing our minds and keep rehealing the childhood that we're talking about, and also making a big wave in this world. This is a world that's going to be hurting a lot, I think, because of the political stuff going on, and we're going to need to be a light in the darkness, as it were. The city that's the light that shines on the hill. What was that song we used to sing? Don't let your candle blow it. I'm going to let it shine. That's it. I'm going to let it shine, and in a very different non-Christian way. You do need to let your light shine so that they may see your good works and glorify your rationality, which is here on earth. Man, those verses keep coming back, don't they? Anyway, love you all. Thank you so much. Hope you have a great, great evening, and I'll be in touch soon. Thanks again.